Ladies and gentlemen, hello and welcome back to the Weigh In Podcast. Next episode of Meet the Fighters, and we are ready to cover the Bantamweights, 135 pounds, another very fun division in the UFC, a very top heavy division, and a division that I feel like is in need of some prospects to come up. We do have a couple that we'll cover in this video that are definitely interesting, but definitely the bigger names and the more fun fighters are definitely very heavily at the top of the division at 135 pounds right now, which is not a bad thing. It's still a very fun division. And let's get into it. Kicking things off with the 15th ranked contender, kind of an up and comer, but on the older side of a prospect, already 35, and that is the American Marcus McGee, the Maniac. He is 10-2 in his MMA career with notable wins over Jonathan Martinez, Gaston Bolaños, and JP Bays. Very heavy hands for the Maniac. He has won 80% of his wins by KO or TKO. That is 8 of his 10 wins. Very heavy hands and great striking. 3 straight performance bonuses to begin his UFC career. Entered the UFC with wins over Journey Newson, JP Bays, and Gaston Bolaños. Did not win a performance bonus in his 4th straight win against Jonathan Martinez. Only UFC loss was to Piotr Jan in his last fight. It's a crazy step up going from Jonathan Martinez to Piotr Jan in one fight. Just a crazy boost for Marcus McGee. Of course, he did lose that fight. And like I said, being 35, I understand he's trying to get to the top a little bit faster. It's not going to be as easy for him to climb back up considering the age, but he definitely has some exciting ability. Like I said, the striking is very good, and he does have heavy hands. He can end a fight at any moment. So definitely a name to keep an eye on in 26. I don't know if I'd say he's necessarily going to be a title contender anytime, but definitely could produce some fun fights, and 3 performance bonuses and 4 UFC wins shows that. So I'm always excited when Marcus McGee's on the card just because he is guaranteed action. Coming in at number 14 is a guy that's on the younger side, 30 years old, and kind of been a pretty high prospect for a while, and that is the Matrix, Kyler Phillips. Phillips is 12-4 in his MMA career with notable wins over Pedro Munoz, Ione Barcelos, and Song Yadong, which that win has aged incredibly well. He was undefeated as an amateur, going 4-0 before turning professional, and he would win his first 5 fights before losing to Victor Henry by split decision in 2018. He has earned 3 UFC performance bonuses in his career and has a very well-rounded skill set, but he's very exciting to watch as exemplified by the performance bonuses. Actually, one of them came in a fight of the night loss against Raulian Paiva back in 2021. Unfortunately for the Matrix, he is on a 2-fight losing streak to Rob Font and Vinicius Oliveira. Has never been finished in his MMA career, all 4 losses coming by way of decision. So Kyler Phillips, a very tough guy to put away and never an easy out. But going to be looking to get back in the win column at some point in 2026. I would imagine he will most likely get an unranked fighter in his next fight to try to defend that number 14 ranking. But despite the 2 losses in a row, he's still on the younger side and has a lot of potential. It'll be interesting to see if he can rebound and get back in the win column in 2026. Coming in at number 13 is the last man to beat Kyler Phillips, like I just mentioned, and that is Vinicius Oliveira, Lock Dog. He is kind of a refreshing guy towards the bottom of the bantamweight rankings because, like I said in the intro, this division is very top heavy, and when a division is top heavy like that, it's definitely not a bad thing because there's a lot of exciting fighters at the top. But what really keeps a division exciting, excuse me, is fresh matchups at the top of the division. So you want to see these prospects cycling through at a regular rate, at a normal rate. And Vinicius Oliveira is one of those guys that is incredibly exciting and has a lot of talent and potential. Only 30 years old for him as well. He's 23-3 in his career with notable wins over Kyler Phillips, Saeed Nurmagomedov, and Ricky Simone. He was the former UAE Warriors Bantamweight champion and has won 3 UFC performance bonuses and 4 UFC outings. All 4 wins. The only one he did not win his performance bonus in was against Ricky Simone. But a very exciting fighter. His knockout of Bernardo Sopai in his UFC debut, that 3rd round flying knee, was absolutely vicious. And yes, you're reading that right. 16 of his 23 wins have come by way of knockout or technical knockout. And that's the only way he's lost, too. He's never lost by submission, never lost by decision. So Vinicius Oliveira is a very exciting fighter to keep an eye on. His last loss came outside the UFC against Ali Taleb in 2022. He has won 6 straight fights since then, including his 4 UFC bouts. And I can't wait to see what's going to be on the books for him in 2026. Coming in at the number 12 contender spot is a veteran and kind of on the downside of his career, but definitely has turned in a lot of great performances over the years, and that is the Bostonian Rob Font. Font is 22-9 in his MMA career, with notable wins over Gene Matsumoto, Kyler Phillips, Adrian Yanez, Cody Garbrandt, Marlon Moraes, Ricky Simone, and Sergio Pettis. A lot of those wins, of course, earlier in his UFC run. Former CES featherweight champion, he defended that belt one time, came to the UFC and dropped down to bantamweight. Has earned 6 performance bonuses in 20 UFC fights. So he's definitely a very exciting fighter, and he absolutely brings it and throws down when he steps in the cage. He has really good striking, and he's shown that multiple times throughout his UFC career, but unfortunately just has not been able to hang with the best of the division. You look at some of his losses over the years, like Davison Figueiredo, Corey Sandhagen, Marlon Vera, Jose Aldo. I mean, he only loses to the best of the best. Did lose in his last outing to an up-and-comer against David Martinez. We haven't really seen that from Rob Font. And especially his last win coming against Gene Matsumoto, who was undefeated going into that fight and a very hyped prospect. Rob Font definitely brings it when he steps in there. So him losing to David Martinez is a little bit odd. It just kind of makes you realize that maybe he is on the downside of his career, but I'm sure he still has a couple exciting fights left in him, and I can't wait to see what's next for him in 2026. Now, coming in at number 11, and this is another very exciting prospect in this division and is quickly turning from prospect to contender, and that is the number 11 ranked Peyton Talbot. Talbot is 11-1 in his MMA career, notable wins over Henry Cejudo, the legend, Felipe Lima, and Cameron Simon. He is the former A1 Combat Bantamweight champion, and he actually vacated that belt to come to the UFC, defended that belt twice as well, and a former amateur champion in King of the Cage. He was undefeated in 5 amateur fights as well. He is very high-level striking, and that is, of course, what he's known for. A 19-second knockout over Giannis Gamori in 2024, which, of course, won him a performance bonus, and, of course, knocking out Cameron Simon in his sophomore UFC outing as well. Peyton Talbot showed a lot of potential. A lot of people thought he got exposed in his first career loss against Raoni Barcelos, where he was pretty much mauled. He did not have any answer for the wrestling and the grappling of Raoni Barcelos. Came back in his next fight against Felipe Lima, a very hype prospect in his own right, and was leaps and bounds improved in his grappling. Then he goes up against Henry Cejudo, a former gold medalist in the Olympics in wrestling, and Talbot out-wrestled Henry Cejudo. So it just goes to show the amount of improvements this kid is making. And I say kid, he's only 27 years old, which for a fighting career that's like a baby. Peyton Talbot, extremely young, so many exciting fights on the horizon for him. And with the amount of improvements he's made in such a small time, the incremental changes he's made to his game and his grappling, Peyton Talbot is going to be an absolute force in this division. I know I've said multiple times I hate saying championship potential. I'm not going to sit here and guarantee that this guy's going to be a champion in the UFC, but it would not surprise me if he's fighting for a belt within the next 5 years. He is extremely talented, a lot of star potential as well, a very eccentric personality. I can't wait to see what's next for him. Now we crack the top 10 and another young up-and-comer, just 27 years old, and that is the Dr. David Martinez. He's 13-1 in his MMA career with notable wins over Rob Font and Simon Oliveira. Former Combat Global Bantamweight champion, did defend that title once, and I hope I'm saying that right. It's a Brazilian promotion, so hopefully I'm not botching that pronunciation. 77% of his wins come by way of knockout. That is 10 of his 13 wins. So very heavy hands and good striking. His only career loss did come by decision that was outside the UFC against Gianni Vasquez in 2021 and has gone on a 9-fight win streak since, including his 2 UFC appearances. He won a performance bonus in his UFC debut, a first-round stoppage over Simon Oliveira, and the win over Rob Font just speaks volumes to how talented this kid is. Very small sample size for him, so I don't really have a ton of information on him. We just need to see a little bit more, but he has definitely passed his first two tests with flying colors, and you got to think he's going to be getting another top 10 opponent in his next fight. So David Martinez, a very exciting young guy to keep your eye on in 2026. Now, coming up at number 9 is a guy that has really gained a lot of momentum lately, but he's been in the bantamweight division for a while and really making waves for years now, and that is Mario Batista. Batista is 16-3 in his professional MMA career with notable wins over Patchy Mix, Jose Aldo, and Ricky Simone. Has earned 3 performance bonuses in his UFC career as well, spanning 13 fights. He was on an 8-fight win streak, got red hot. He lost, got knocked out by Trevin Jones back in 2021. And then that 8-fight win streak was eventually ended in his last fight by Umar Nurmagomedov. So Mario Batista did have his win streak snapped in his last outing, but some incredible wins before then. And the Jose Aldo win, I know a lot of people didn't like it because Batista was trying to take Aldo down. Aldo was defending. It was a little controversial, but then he goes out and dominates Patchy Mix, and I think he kind of righted the ship in terms of his fan perception. So Mario Batista, a guy that personally I like. I feel like he kind of got a bad rub from the Jose Aldo fight. That's not entirely his fault. He was just trying to implement his game plan. I know it was a little bit boring, but you got to do what you got to do to win sometimes. And I actually missed this when I was talking about Vinicius Oliveira, but I typed this a couple days ago, and I guess since then they got a fight on the books for Oliveira against Mario Batista. So Mario Batista versus Vinicius Oliveira, that is February 7th, the main event at UFC Fight Night. I guess that's new. I guess I missed that somehow. Um, that fight was not on the books when I was typing this. So breaking news, I guess, on the Weigh In podcast. If you haven't heard yet, Mario Batista, Vinicius Oliveira will be headlining UFC Fight Night on February 7th. Great matchup. I'm really excited for that main event. Now, moving on to the number 8 contender, and this is a guy that has been in the division for a long, long time, and that is, of course, Marlon Vera, better known as Chito. The Ecuadorian is 23-11-1 in his MMA career with some incredible notable wins over Pedro Munoz, Dominic Cruz, Rob Font, Frankie Edgar, and Sean O'Malley. He has 8 performance bonuses in his UFC career, one of the more exciting guys in the division, and his UFC career spans 25 fights, so a large sample size and plenty of incredible moments. He also had a streak where he won 4 performance bonuses in a row from 2021 to 2022 and wins over Davey Grant, Frankie Edgar, Rob Font, and Dominic Cruz. The Edgar knockout was crazy, and the Dominic Cruz knockout was crazy as well, ended up breaking his nose. So Marlon Chito Vera, one of the more exciting guys in the division. His win over Sean O'Malley was a little bit weird. He was calf kicking Sean O'Malley and ended up hitting his sciatic nerve in his leg. O'Malley was unable to really stand and strike. Ended up going to the ground where Vera will win by ground and pound. But he actually got a rematch against Sean O'Malley once Sean won the belt for the UFC title and did lose that fight. It was not close, but does hold a win over Sean O'Malley, so that definitely holds weight. Unfortunately for Vera, at present, he is on a 3-fight losing streak, and he has lost 4 of his last 5. A loss to Corey Sandhagen, win over Munoz, and then the losses to O'Malley, Davison Figueiredo, and Ayman Zahabi. So looking to get back on track in 2026, but definitely still a very important player in this division. Coming in at number 7, moving on, a streaking Canadian working his way up the bantamweight ranks right now, and that is Ayman Zahabi. Zahabi, one of the more underrated guys in this division. He's been slowly and quietly climbing his way up the rankings for a while, but has really started to make a name for himself in his last few fights. He has notable wins and very important wins over Marlon Chito Vera, Jose Aldo, Pedro Munoz, and Javed Basharat. And some great training for Ayman Zahabi. He is, of course, the brother of Faraz Zahabi, who was George St. Pierre's coach all throughout his prime and runs TriStar Gym up in Montreal, Quebec, Canada. Zahabi is currently on a 7-fight win streak as well. Began his UFC career a little bit rocky, was 1-2 in his first 3 before going on this 7-fight run. He's very well-rounded with a high IQ, and of course, being the brother of Faraz Zahabi and getting that coaching throughout his career, not really surprising that he really has a high fight IQ and is very smart in the way he fights. And something you'll kind of notice, there's not really one particular aspect of his game that truly stands out. He's pretty well rounded, but his IQ is really the biggest thing that's getting him a lot of his wins. Now, something to keep an eye on with him is he is on the older side. He's 38 and still working his way up. So it just kind of makes you wonder what his ceiling is and how far he can really go. But Ayman Zahabi, definitely an important name to keep an eye on. He has a lot of momentum, and I expect him to really be going for a big name opponent in 2026. Being 38 already, you don't have a lot of time left in the sport, probably maybe 2 or 3 years if he's lucky. So if he wants a shot at a UFC title, he's going to have to get a top 5 guy in his next opponent. And I would imagine that is going to be next for a guy on a 7 fight win streak, working his way up the division. Now, coming in at number 6, and this is a legend from another division, the former flyweight champion, 2-time flyweight champion, as a matter of fact, and now competing in the bantamweight division, and that is, of course, Davison Figueiredo Deus Dagueira, which directly translates to the God of War. He is 25-1 in his MMA career with notable wins, and it's a long list, so prepare yourself. Over Montel Jackson, Cheeto Vera, Cody Garbrandt, Rob Font, Brandon Moreno, Alex Perez, twice beat Joseph Benavidez, Tim Elliott, and the great Alexandre Pantoja. As I mentioned, he was a former 2-time UFC flyweight champion. The belt was vacated by Henry Cejudo when he moved up to 135 pounds. Figueiredo would contest for the vacant title against Joseph Benavidez, but missed weight. Ended up winning the fight anyway, but since he missed weight, the belt stayed vacant. In the rematch against Joe B, Figueiredo made weight and put on one of the worst beatdowns that we've ever seen in a UFC title fight. Just absolutely smashed Joseph Benavidez to win that title. Defended his belt successfully against Alex Perez with a first round submission, and technically got a second successful defense. It was a draw against Brandon Moreno. Him and Moreno, of course, had that infamous quadrilogy in which there was a draw. Figueiredo lost the second, won the third, lost the fourth. A legendary run in the flyweight division and a legendary rivalry. He had a streak of 4 straight performance bonuses as well. Or I'm sorry, just 4 UFC performance bonuses in general. They weren't in a row. My mistake. I was reading the next bullet point, but 4 performance bonuses in his UFC career. And with as exciting as he is, and with the incredible knockout power he possesses, it's kind of surprising that it's only 4, to be completely honest with you. Figueiredo did win 15 straight fights to begin his MMA career. I was actually at his first loss. It was in Nashville in 2019 against Jussier Formiga. After that, he would, of course, go on his championship run and would not lose again until Brandon Moreno was able to take the title from him. He is 1-2 in his last 3 fights. Came down to bantamweight, and he beat Rob Font, Cody Garbrandt, and Marlon Barrett in succession. Then, unfortunately, did lose to 2 of the top-level guys in this division against Piotr Jan and Corey Sandhagen. Got back on the horse with a split decision win against the ever-tough Montel Jackson, and has one of the most important fights of his career booked against Umar Nurmagomedov on January 24th. That is a huge fight to determine the landscape of this division heading into 2026. And I am very, very excited to watch that fight and see how that goes for both men. Very important fight in terms of the title picture and potentially even determining the next challenger for Piotr Jan. You never know. But with Figueiredo being 38 already and a lot of miles on the tank, this kind of seems like a must win for him if he wants to get back in the title picture. And to be completely honest, at that age, with all Davison Figueiredo's accomplished, if he does lose to Umar, I could see him maybe retiring. That's pure speculation on my part, so I wouldn't read too much into that. That's not a rumor. That's not a report. That is just my speculation. Because when you're a guy like Figueiredo that has accomplished so much and does have so many accolades already to his name, if you're not going to win a title, you wonder if he'll stick around. Some guys do, some guys don't. So we'll see if Figueiredo's one of those guys, or he just beats Umar and then it doesn't matter anyway. He's right back in the title picture. So a lot to be determined for the career of Davison Figueiredo, at least the late career. Already likely a UFC Hall of Famer due to his run at flyweight, and really played a big part in reviving the flyweight division, and now trying to make his mark as a bantamweight. Now moving into the top 5, and we've got He's definitely not an up-and-comer anymore. He was an up-and-comer for a long time. I believe he entered the UFC at 21 years old, now a ripe 28 and sitting firmly in the top 5, and that is China's Kung Fu Kid, Song Yadong. Song is 22-8-1 in his MMA career with notable wins over Henry Cejudo, Chris Gutierrez, Ricky Simone, Marlon Moraes, and Chito Vera. 6 performance bonuses in his UFC career spanning 15 fights. He has elite striking and incredible speed on his strikes. Always has been one of the faster strikers that I've ever seen and is so much fun to watch whenever he gets in there. And when he's on, oh man. He had a knockout. It was back in 2019 against Alejandro Perez when he really burst onto the UFC scene. He had a couple performance bonuses before and was already kind of a hyped up guy, but he slept Alejandro Perez so bad. It was one of the nastiest knockouts. Go watch it. One of the cleanest KOs you'll ever see. He did go on a little bit of an up and down streak, but only lost to some of the better guys in the division. Lost to Kyler Phillips, Corey Sandhagen, and Piotr Jan. But his last fight, a very impressive win against Henry Cejudo, and has the most important fight of his career scheduled on January 24th, a movie night for the Bantamweight division, as he takes on Sugar Sean O'Malley. That is an incredibly important fight to determine the future of this division. And if Song Yadong wants to prove that he is a legitimate contender right now, this is a very important fight for him. If he loses to Sean O'Malley, it's definitely not the end of the world for him. Like I said, he is only 28. So he is still very young in this game. And even though he has lost to some better competition earlier in his career, with him being this young, that goes a long way in just gaining that experience and feeling that top level. It's like I said back in the women's flyweight division against with Miranda Maverick losing against top competition. When you're that young, that really helps you once you mature and really grow into your body. So Song Yadong has a lot of championship level experience before even getting to the championship level. So I'm very interested to see what all that experience can do for him in a fight against the former champion Sean O'Malley. Now we take things to the number 4 contender, and this is a guy that's been at the top of this division for a long time as well, the better part of the last half decade, and that is Colorado's Corey Sandhagen. The Sandman is 18-6 in his MMA career, and another very long notable wins list, including Davison Figueiredo, Rob Font, Chito Vera, Song Yadong, Frankie Edgar, Marlon Moraes, Rafael Assunção, John Lineker, and Mario Bautista. He was the former Sparta Combat League featherweight champion, dropped down to bantamweight upon entering the UFC, and has won 5 performance bonuses in his UFC career. Went on that incredible knockout streak. It was really 2 fights in a row where he wheel kicked Marlon Moraes and then flying kneed Frankie Edgar in less than 30 seconds. That being probably the biggest win of his career, or most notable win of his career for Corey Sandhagen, that flying knee over Edgar. He did get a title shot against Merab Dvalishvili in his last fight. Did come up short, but a long overdue title shot for Corey Sandhagen. He came so close so many times. He was right there to number 1 contender fight against Aljamain Sterling in 2020. Lost to Sterling. Sterling fought for the belt next. Got the fight against TJ Dillashaw when Dillashaw returned from suspension. Lost that fight. Dillashaw challenged for the title next. Got an interim title shot against Piotr Jan. Lost that fight. Obviously, Jan would go on to fight for the title next. Fought Umar Nurmagomedov in 2024. Lost that. Finally got the notable win that he needed against Davison Figueiredo to really put him over the top and get to challenge Merab Dvalishvili for the title. So Corey Sandhagen, a very long and credentialed UFC career. You're starting to doubt if he'll ever truly reach that undisputed championship status, as he does seem to fall short against the absolute best of the best. I mean, he is not losing to slouches at all. He is losing to the absolute cream of the crop in the bantamweight division. But the thing is, to be the champion of a division, you have to be able to beat some of the cream of the crop of that division. So I don't know if that's in the cards for Corey Sandhagen. He is still 33, so he has time. A very difficult puzzle to solve, but as of now, just coming up short against the top guys in his division, but absolutely deserves his spot in the top 5. Now, coming in at number 3, we have a former champion of this division and probably still the most popular fighter in this division, and that is, of course, the Sugar Show, Sugar Sean O'Malley. O'Malley is 18-3 in his MMA career with notable wins over Chito Vera, Aljamain Sterling, and Piotr Jan. As I mentioned, he is the former UFC Bantamweight champion, defended that belt once. He won the title off of Aljamain Sterling, defended against Cheeto, and eventually would lose it to Marab. Got to rematch Marab as well for the title in 2025, lost that as well, so he has lost his last two. He was a former multiple time champion in the amateur ranks. He did have a couple losses in an amateur, but did end up winning 4 amateur titles and a staggering 9 UFC performance bonuses. That is just insane in 14 UFC fights. 9 out of 14 performance bonuses is just crazy. He has elite knockout power for the bantamweight division, and the one that stands out to me is always going to be that knockout over Eddie Wineland in 2020 in the quiet Apex, no fans during the pandemic. He slept Eddie Wineland bad. It was one of the cleanest walk-off KOs you will ever see, and he's really had that knockout power throughout his UFC career. Um, and of course, a very important prove it fight for the former champion coming up against Song Yadong. And Sean O'Malley has said himself if he loses to Song Yadong, that might be it for him, which I completely understand. He's a massive star. He's made plenty of money in this sport. He's not one of those guys that needs the money to fight, right? So he's one of those guys, if he's not going to be in the title picture, I don't really see him sticking around, which as a fan is a shame because he's still pretty young. He's only 31. And I mean, losing back to back to Marab is no shame at all. And if he were to lose to a guy like Song Yadong, I mean, Yadong is one of the best in this division. So, but Sean has said if he loses to Song Yadong, he will have to really sit and think about whether he wants to continue fighting. So we'll see what's in the cards for Sean O'Malley against Song. That fight is on January 24th, as I mentioned, with Song. So we'll see what's next for the Sugar Show. But very important prove it fight for him and one that he really needs to win, according to himself. Now, coming in at number 2, we have the divisional Dagestani, as I mentioned at flyweight. You're going to see one in just about every single division. And the bantamweight one is one of the best, and that is, of course, Habib's cousin, Umar Nurmagomedov. Umar is 19-1 in his MMA career, some notable wins over Mario Batista, Corey Sandhagen, Bekzat Almakhan, and Ioni Barcelos. He is the former FMMAS bantamweight champion and guerrilla fighting bantamweight champion. 3 performance bonuses in his UFC career, and the most notable a fight of the night against Merab Dvalishvili. That was for the UFC title and a fight that he lost, his only loss in his career. But the thing is, Umar really did not look bad in that fight. He probably won the first 2 rounds, to be completely honest with you. But Merab, of course, his gas tank is just insane, and Umar ended up gassing in the later rounds and just could not keep up with the pace of Dvalishvili. Ended up losing that fight, but I still believe that Umar is absolutely one of the best in this division. I would be shocked if he doesn't hold a UFC title at some point in his MMA career. He really is that talented. He has incredibly high level striking, and of course, coming from Dagestan, you know he's got good wrestling, but he's just got to work on that gas tank. Very important fight for him coming up at UFC 324 against Davison Figueiredo, and I envision Umar winning that fight, but it is an interesting test for him. Figueiredo's a very dangerous guy and an interesting puzzle for Umar to have to figure out. So we'll see how he does against the former flyweight champion. If he wins that, he's right there in the mix for another title shot. Um, we'll see if he ends up getting it. He's got to win first, like I said, but Umar Nurmagomedov, definitely one of the most talented guys in this division. I believe a future champion. Again, I hate crowning guys like that, but he's only 30, and if he looked that good against Merab, before gassing, he's got plenty of time to work on that gas tank and maybe eventually win that ever elusive UFC title. Now we come to the number 1 contender in the bantamweight division, and that is, of course, the former champion, one of the greatest the division's ever seen, and that is the Georgian, the machine, Merab Dvalishvili. Merab is 21-5 in his MMA career with a very impressive and long notable wins list, including Corey Sandhagen, Sean O'Malley twice, Umar Nurmagomedov, Henry Cejudo, Piotr Jan, Jose Aldo, John Dodson, and Rafian Stotts outside the UFC. Interesting story about that Rafian Stotts win, actually. There's this series that Dana White, the UFC president, does called Dana White's Looking for a Fight, where he would go and scout talent for the UFC. And he ended up going to a regional promotion. I think it was Ring of Combat, if I'm not mistaken. And they were going to go look at Rafian Stotts. who was a hot prospect on the rise. Um, so they went to watch him. But something about this show is Matt Serra was on this show as well, a former UFC champion, and he's training now with Ray Longo up in Long Island. They have a gym, Sarah Weidman Longo or Longo White, something like that. But I don't remember what the gym's called now. But it used to be just Sarah Longo. But regardless, Matt Serra was on the show as well, and he trained Marab, and he was telling Dana White, like, you've got to watch out for this kid. Marab's good. They were going to watch Stotts, but he said, don't sleep on Marab. And Marab ended up sleeping Raufeon Stotts in 15 seconds with a spinning back fist. 15 seconds. That's right. Marab was the Ring of Combat Bantamweight champion at the time, and after that knockout, he ran over to Dana White. Dana White signed him, and the rest was history, right? Wrong. Marab would actually lose his first two UFC fights to Frankie Saenz and Ricky Simone in a fight of the night. And then he went on a 14 fight win streak, which eventually culminated in the UFC title. Won that against Sean O'Malley, defended it 3 times against Umar Nurmagomedov, O'Malley again, and Corey Sandhagen. One of the best runs the bantamweight division has ever seen, and one of the best win streaks that the UFC has ever seen. For those that don't know, the longest win streak in UFC history is 16. There's a tie at the top for that record between Islam Makhachev and Anderson Silva, but Merab with the longest, I'm pretty sure it's the longest win streak in bantamweight history. So just an incredible resume. There's a lot of people that argue he is the greatest bantamweight of all time. It's tough. It's really tough. It's either him or Dominic Cruz, but Merab is right there. And his nickname kind of speaks for himself, the Machine. He has the greatest gas tank that I've ever seen in my entire time watching MMA. Just absolutely legendary cardio. And he, of course, did lose his last fight, but I honestly think it was just a little bit of too much activity catching up to him. This past year, he became the first UFC champion to attempt 4 title defenses in a calendar year. 3 successful. He did come up short in his final one. So it just kind of makes you think sometimes you do have to prioritize rest and listen to your body a little bit. But Merab, absolutely one of the best bantamweights of all time. I don't think there's an argument for him being in the top 2. It's just whether or not he has the resume to compete with Dominic Cruz. But it, if you wanted to say Merab, I don't really think too many people would argue with it. And personally, I'm not upset with it either. So Merab, absolutely one of the best in this division of all time. And he, despite losing his title to Piotr Jan in his last fight, he is still 35. So he does have a little bit of time. I mean, Father Time is going to catch up to everybody, but Merab still wants to fight for a while. And personally, I wouldn't be opposed to a rematch with him and Piotr Jan. We'll see what happens. But Merab, just a legend of the bantamweight division, still one of the biggest stars in the sport, and absolutely interested to see what's going to happen for him in 2026. But that does take us to the top dog in the bantamweight division, the reigning, defending, undisputed UFC bantamweight champion, and that is Russia's Piotr Yan, now in his second reign as the bantamweight champion, and a 20-5 overall MMA record. Notable wins for him include Merab Dvalishvili, Marcus McGee, Davison Figueiredo, Song Yadong, Corey Sandhagen, Jose Aldo, Uriah Faber, Jimmy Rivera, John Dodson, and Magomed Magomedov. Long list, I know, but purity on one of the most impressive resumes. He was also a former 2-time ACB bantamweight champion outside the UFC, and his story is very interesting inside the UFC, and especially during his reign and just kind of his overall time in the title picture. Period. He came into the UFC winning 8 fights in a row. The 8th win was his title win against Jose Aldo. The title was vacant, and Piotr Jan would end up winning that vacant title. He would actually get his first title defense against Aljamain Sterling, and Jan was winning that fight. It was the 4th round. Jan was up 2 rounds to 1 and winning the 4th round as well. So he was about to go up 3 rounds to 1. Aljamain Sterling was starting to gas, desperately shooting takedowns. And then for some reason, Piotr Jan decides to throw an illegal knee, injured Sterling, fight was called off, and he lost his title. He would rebound with an interim championship win against Corey Sandhagen, but then would lose a rematch to Aljamain Sterling, then lose his next 2 as well to Sean O'Malley, and just got absolutely demolished by Merab Dvalishvili. And with as badly as Merab beat him, it was starting to look like things might be over for Petr Yan in the title picture. And just what a turn, right? He was only 28 when he won the Bantamweight title for the first time. You'd think he's this great young champion, only had one career loss at the time, and then goes on to lose 4 of his next 5. Just such an unfortunate run. But then he comes back. He beats Song Yadong, beats Davison Figueiredo, beats Marcus McGee. That's 3 wins in a row. Gets a rematch against Merab Dvalishvili, and based off the way the first fight between them went, no one expected Petr Yan to win this. I think Merab was like a minus 425 favorite, which even with the way the first fight went, I really thought that was kind of blown up in a way. I didn't think Petr Yan should have been that big of an underdog. However, I definitely wasn't picking him, but the odds definitely should have been a little bit closer. The odds showed an immense amount of disrespect towards Petr Yan. But then he goes out there, puts on the performance of his life, and takes the title off of Merab Dvalishvili. Petr Yan is back on top of the bantamweight division. From going 1-4 in a 5-fight stretch to now a 4-fight win streak and reclaiming his bantamweight title. Such a feel-good story at the end of 2025, and so many fans are happy to see Petr Yan on top. And it really begs the question of what's going to be next for him in his first title defense. I'm interested to see that Merab rematch, but if Umar Nurmagomedov does get past Davison Figueiredo, maybe we give Merab a little bit of a break. I know that's probably going to drive Merab crazy, but you can't tell me you don't want to see a Petr Yan and Umar Nurmagomedov title fight. The striking exchanges in that fight would be absolutely incredible. You have the Russia versus Russia storyline. I mean, there's so much there. I would absolutely love to see that fight. That is probably my dream matchup in the bantamweight division right now is Petr Yan versus Umar Nurmagomedov. That's not to say that Merab doesn't absolutely deserve a rematch against Petr Yan, and especially with his dominant title reign, he absolutely does deserve an immediate rematch, and I would not be upset if he gets that at all. But just thinking about how fun that fight would be between Merab and Petr Yan, or I'm sorry, Umar and Petr Yan, I would love to see that in his first defense if Umar makes a statement against Davison Figueiredo. But that is going to do it for the bantamweight division, a very interesting division to keep track of in 2026, and a lot of big fights on the horizon that have yet to be announced. January 24th, a very important night for the bantamweight title pictures. We will have 2 massive fights, and of course that main event on February 7th as well between Vinicius Oliveira and oh my God, I'm blanking. I'm sorry, guys. I'm completely blanking on that main event. It was Oliveira and oh man, very important main event. Regardless, I'm so sorry, guys. Um, you guys know the one I'm talking about, but Batista, Mario Batista. That is my fault. Again, as I mentioned in one of my last videos, when I record these, it's literally a straight recording. I want these to feel raw. I want these to feel real. So I don't really do a lot of editing. So that's gonna stay in. All the bloopers, all the mess ups, anything, it's gonna stay in. You guys are in this journey with me through everything, through the ups and downs. So, but nonetheless, Vinicius Oliveira and Mario Batista, great main event, and the 2 big fights on January 24th as well that could determine the next title challenger for Petr Yan. So 2026 is going to be a big year for the bantamweight division. I can't wait to see what's next, and I will have you guys along for the ride with me. Featherweights are going to be coming up next, a division run by Alexander Volkanovski at present, and that division's title will be on the line on January 31st. We will meet the entire top 15 and the champ in the next episode. I will see you guys then. Peace.